that's it. It's-
Now's not the time to.
Yeah, because then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
No, getting parts is very important. Like it hadn't been an issue before now, but now.
Yeah, I mean, we had to see the issue.
Your worship, we are now live.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Would you mind getting the door running?
Yes.
This was the last one, that sort of made it controversial, and then it hasn't been consumed forever, so it's got that me too. Shouldn't be done.
Okay. It's 1 o'clock and I'll call today's meeting to order. I'll start first with our acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples. The town of Rocky Mountain House wishes to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Saulteaux, Stoney, and Métis. Okay, we'll move on to number 3, and I'd like to point out that we do have Councillor Maren Fraser by Zoom today. So an agenda in front of us, do we have any additions to the agenda? So seeing none, just a motion to accept the agenda. Councillor Auld, all in favor of accepting the agenda as presented? Okay, thank you. Carried. No delegations. Adoption of previous minutes, 5.1. Anybody have any concerns on the previous minutes? Councillor Phillips?
Make a motion to adopt those minutes.
Minutes of August 18th. All in favor of that motion? Carried, thank you. Moving on to number 7. We have 7.1, the RFD for CEIP, SEEP grant. Ms. Quinlan?
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. This is just, we're bringing back the SEEP bylaw for the borrowing for the SEEP program, or PACE, whatever we want to call it. So we brought it in August and you gave first reading to it. We advertised it for 2 weeks. There was no responses, so now we are able to bring it back for second and third reading if council so wishes.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Does anybody have any questions?
No, I think we're having it the first time, yeah.
Okay, and nobody else seemed to have any, so we just need motion for second and third and final. Councillor Alderson?
I'll make a motion that council gives second. I assume these are 2 separate
Yep.
motions. Give second reading to the line of credit borrowing bylaw 2020/21.
I've got that as one motion, but it's
Your worship, it's 2 motions.
It is 2 motions, okay, good, thank you. Okay, everybody clear on that motion? Okay, all in favor of that motion? Okay, and that's carried, thank you. So we just need a motion for third and final. Councillor Auld?
I'll give a motion that council give third reading to the line of credit borrowing bylaw 2020/21.
All in favor of that motion? Councillor Fraser? Thank you. And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, and we'll move on to 7.2, the spring cleanup. Turn that over to Mr. Shanks.
I didn't touch the table.
Could have done it from back there. Can I ask a question while that's happening? Yeah, just about this SEEP bylaw. So what's the process now that we've passed that part of it?
Your worship, I mean, we're still working with the province to finalize the program.
Okay, but so once it is finalized, we're ready to go because we've done this?
We are ready to go.
Awesome.
We're waiting for the agreement from the province, so there's been delays there because they switched from EEC to
MCC, AAC.
We revised our bylaws, all the other bylaws.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Shanks.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, the council. So in regards to the spring cleanup, in the spring when COVID all started, we decided, you guys decided that we were going to postpone this until a later date. We still have the same issues as we did when the original decision was made. COVID is still here. Right now, it's actually getting worse than what it's been most of the summer. The other thing with this is we lost all our summer students. They all went back to school on Friday the 28th.
Okay.
So now we're down to very minimal crew. It would take a lot longer to be able to do a good spring cleanup like we normally would. So we're looking for direction on what we want to do.
Okay, council conversation? Councilor Phillips?
I love the program. It's a great program, and unfortunately, with COVID this year, it's just changed. It's changed operating business in some ways, and this is one of the programs that I unfortunately see is going to have to be postponed until next year now.
Okay, I have Councilor Narang, Councilor Fraser, Councilor Alderson.
Is this something that Empringham would do for a fee that would be similar to how much it would have cost us to do it ourselves?
No.
No.
No, he doesn't have the capacity to do it, so.
Okay.
But if somebody wanted to hire a private hauler, there are some private haulers in town that could
That's correct,
go
yes.
to.
We haven't had very many inquiries on it, and the ones that do call, they're just asking, do we do it ourselves now, or is it gonna happen? And, nobody's been really overly upset about it, so.
Okay, understanding, thanks. Councilor Fraser?
I was just gonna ask if there were people that had a big item and they really needed it picked up, if there was, I guess they could call and register a pickup and one day they'd go and do those items. I don't know how many of those there would be, but I know there was a few people asking, am I gonna chop this up with an axe and take it to the dump, or is it happening? So I wasn't sure if there was if people had a really big item and they didn't have a way to get it to the dump, if there was a way they could, I guess it'd be like a hybrid. It would not be a total cancellation, but just for those who had an item that needed to go. That might be overly complicated. It was less complicated in my head.
Well, I believe the issue is you're still dealing with the same COVID issues that we dealt with in the spring. So I don't know, does anybody else have anything they want to add to that? Councilor Alderson?
Yeah, if there was a private company that was willing to do it, then why would we stand in the way of that? There is people that don't have a means of getting things to the dump that are large items that I haven't had tons of inquiries, but some. It doesn't mean that just because somebody hasn't inquired, if they were told that it was postponed, assuming that it was going to be postponed indefinitely, why would they be inquiring? So I think that it would be worthwhile looking to a company that would maybe over a couple of days or however long it would take during 1 week to do that, if they were willing to do that for people in town.
So just to clarify then, that would be at the over cost to the resident though?
That's correct.
Yeah. I believe we do have a few local companies that do pick up, do we not?
Yeah, we do.
Could we just, do we know what their restrictions are during COVID? No.
I have no idea.
Could we put a list on our website?
On our website.
The local businesses that are doing this service this year?
Yeah? Is that?
Yeah, so your worship, so understanding Councillor Narang's request is the town would notify the program is not running this year, but here's a list of contractors in town that can provide you this service.
Right.
And we would contact those companies prior to doing that, just to ensure that they are willing to or can.
Maybe even those businesses would be willing to cost share among, if they had a whole bunch that day, they could.
It just gives people an option, which is great, because right now the option is if they can't bring it there, they don't have an option.
I guess my question is if we can't do it either for COVID, how are the private haulers doing that? I guess
We can do it, I think it would just be complicated and hard.
Yeah, your worship, so that'd be the required PPE.
okay, and that would then be up to the private industry. Okay. Yeah, I'm completely good with that. Putting the list of contractors on the website.
We'll get that done.
Yeah. Any other questions? Comments? Council's wishes? What do you want to do? Councilor Auld?
If there's no more discussion, I'll just make a motion that town council 2020 spring cleanup due to COVID-19.
Okay. Everybody clear on that motion? All in favor of that motion? Opposed? Frozen? Yes.
Utterly disgusted, maybe that's what that face was. She's not talking to us.
Councillor Fraser, I was just calling, are you in favor of that motion or in favor of the motion? Okay,
Yes.
okay. Thank you. That motion is carried then.
Very painfully carried.
Okay, moving on to thanks, Mr. Shanks. Moving on to 8.1, the ATCO franchise fees. And that is Ms. Quinlan. Pardon me? I have to get you guys more in, so you're there and then you're gone.
Just hold people down, they come up to the
That's right, it just takes less.
fire was in the
Decontamination chamber.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Good afternoon again. This is an annual request or notification that we receive from ATCO. So they provide us with franchise fees that are based off of their transactions or their pipelines. Right now we charge the rate is 30%. The maximum cap is 35, but I don't know if council wishes to increase it. The forecast for this year is increased, so they're looking at $663,000 in franchise fees for this year. So it is up from last year, and they give us the 2019 amount, so it has increased. A 1% increase would generate about $20,000 more revenue.
So just to clarify, it has increased even though we haven't increased the,
Yeah, it has increased. It's based on volume.
oh, okay.
So
Right.
the franchise fees would go based on how much. So if they're using more gas or people are using more gas, then our fees would go up.
Okay. Councillor Narang?
Why wouldn't we max it out?
Your worship, so really how franchise fees work is we charge the utility companies like ATCO and Fortis, but then they direct bill onto their bill to all of our residents.
So they'll just pass that on?
So it is passed on to our ratepayers.
If you look on your bill, you'll see a franchise fee rider. So in essence, we're collecting it from residents.
Okay.
So you can, but typically a lot of municipalities don't charge the full amount.
No, and that makes sense. I didn't realize that, so that's.
So the only, your worship, so the only benefit of increasing franchise fees is you have to collect that money off tax exempt properties also. But then the challenge is if you increase it, then you try to lower your municipal tax rate, which is difficult too.
Right. Are we, is this going in line, the 30%? Are we high? Are we?
They didn't give us a listing of municipalities that are on at the 30, but I would say it's pretty typical. My recall is there's a couple that are at the 35, but most of them.
And we haven't actually increased this franchise fee in a few years, so I'm good with just leaving it. Anybody else have discussion, Councillor Narang?
Yeah, I'm just curious what I would like to see the municipalities that have the high franchise fees, what their municipal tax rate would be reflected, or would there be a direct reflection?
Your worship, it'd be pretty tough to do a direct reflection of that.
Okay.
Because they can justify it, like, it might have any other, like, because if they're raising it, that is on ATCO or whoever, even though knowingly ATCO's gonna pass it off, or whoever would pass it on, that's a business decision. They don't have to, they're choosing to.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the rationale would come from, but who knows?
Interesting. That's all I was just querying.
So we will have Fortis coming to us as well for franchise fees as well.
Yes, your worship. So-
And do we know what we're at with Fortis or?
Are we at 30% as well? I'd have to check.
Your worship, I believe it's 25%.
Oh, okay.
Okay. That's
Fortis.
I guess it's hard to decide on Fortis now when we don't have the information, but definitely. What is the direction council would like to go?
Fine with leaving that.
Councillor Brown?
If there's no further discussion, I'll make the motion that council maintain the 2020 ATCO Gas and Pipelines Limited franchise fee at the existing rate of 30%.
Okay. Any other conversation? All in favor of that motion? And that motion is carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to 8.2, the Emergency Social Services Plan, draft plan.
Sorry. I was looking at my agenda and I thought it was you again.
So that's... Well done.
Well, I'm gonna wait.
Oh, thanks, Laura.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and honorable council members. Everyone's good today? I'm here to present, thanks, the ESS plan to council seeking adoption. It's already been presented to the Emergency Advisory Committee, and it was recommended that we come before you today. So if it's okay with you, I'll just go through some highlights in the plan. Sure. We made a few changes for those of you that were at the EAC meeting. We've added our partner First Nations groups or reserves, and also changed home hardware slightly. Instead of declined, we just put the general office number. So you'll find the First Nations contacts listed in a few areas throughout the plan. So I'll just jump you forward to page 9 where we start with the emergency contact list. So I'll just go through this. Please stop me at any point if you have any questions or comments. So here we have listed the positions and the folks that are attached to those positions. And we're going to be meeting as a group as town staff to go through the positions, the roles and responsibilities, and the setup of the reception center. So just to clarify the difference between the ESS plan and the municipal emergency plan is this goes under the municipal emergency plan, and we would use this if the DEM or Mr. Dean Kraus activated a reception center site. So that would be taking care of the lodging, the personal care, clothing needs of residents. Okay, so just you can see who's attached, Rebecca and I there in the branch direction there, and lodging, food, volunteer, registration, inquiry, pet management, and donations. We have meet and greet here on the next page, traffic control, security, and safety. So under ESS support, assisting cooperating agencies, we have some of our local partners such as Alberta Health Services, Asian Edmonton Children's Services, and we've touched base with all these folks and they're prepared to assist if necessary. We've also touched base with the vet centers and clinics, McMahon, the 3 reserves, and the wellness program in the schools. Everybody was happy to partner and assist. So now I'm on to page 13, community supports. So just listing a few more there that we could call upon in need, so those numbers are handy. Am I going too quickly? No. Okay. So then the introduction's on page 14. So that just explains the purpose of this plan, just like I highlighted at the start today. And so we will be looking into this yearly and updating as necessary. We did give this to the provincial emergency operations for their edits, and they did give us some feedback, and we've made note of and made some changes as a result. So that was good because they're currently compiling a template for municipalities to use, because at this point there's no template to follow. So this is an amalgamation of a few different documents from a few different municipalities. Lots of changes due to the pandemic as well, so we've added that in as we can. So I'm on 2.1 here, the organization. So just listing the positions and just making note of the ICS format and the coloring to assist. And I'm on the flow chart here. The functions of ESS on page 17. And I'm on 18. So just explaining the reception center sites. If it's activated, they're really moving towards drive-through registration or online through My Alberta. We all just recently took reception training. And then the standards on page 19 and 20, just some cleaning and whatnot, which these are big additions from COVID. Just things to take precautions, sleeping, distancing and whatnot that we've learned from Edmonton. Garbage collection, food handling. If we need to isolate someone that's symptomatic. Now I'm on page 24, pets. So we would bring in Roar Society for that since they're the experts. And they're happy to help as well. Some mental health considerations that folks might have and other special considerations such as if someone's pregnant and pest control. And special considerations for vulnerable populations. So I'm on page 27 now, the volunteer center, which would rely heavily on Rebecca, of course, because she has her volunteer registry through FCSS. And emergency lodging, we would make use of our local partners for that, if at all possible, the hotels, because they would have those procedures and policies in place to better handle that. Human resource management, childcare support. Page 31, roles and responsibilities. So here we are now, you can see the orange square on 3.1, the ESS director. So that would be myself or Rebecca in my absence. So it's a nice checklist of things to do to make sure they get done if a reception center is activated. And you might note that on a few of the different positions, there's a few repeats, such as the original site inspection, just to be sure that the beginning condition and the end condition of the site are noted for insurance purposes and whatnot. So the green is Rebecca, the deputy branch director. And then registration inquiry manager, evacuee lodging manager, 3.4. 3.5, the food manager. Any questions so far? Okay. 3.6, volunteer services supervisor. So if it's a big enough emergency, Rebecca could put in a trusted volunteer into that position to help her out. The R&I supervisor. As I mentioned before, it's going online instead of the old card system. So pet manager, again, that would be Roar. But just a checklist for their duties. Donations unit manager. Personal services supervisor. So that would be Rocky Support Services, because they would have expertise in that area, folks with exceptional needs. The meet and greet, so that would be the first face when someone walks into the reception center, so we would want that person to be really personable. Okay, the security, which would likely be Mike and his team at the arena, since they know this site. Now I'm on the setup, 4.2, so you can see there's the drive-through model considerations, which is newer. Best practice signage, which we've ordered. Bert did a great job. He ordered a bunch of signs should we need to hang them. And just some beginner supplies, all saran wrapped and ready to go, like clipboards, pens, and things if we had to activate in a hurry. I'm on 57 now, so some media do's and don'ts, which of course Laura would be the main contact, but just in case folks are approached who are either working or volunteering. Some lodging information there on page 59. Same with 61. transportation, because folks might be in need of that, so we would have a designated area for that. And then number 5, deactivation, again by the DEM, the Director of Emergency Management, Mr. Dean Kraus. So just some notes about deactivating the things to make sure we do. And resources that we might need to call upon in an emergency that are available. And then again, 6.1, we've got some contact info, Town Council, Rocky Mountain House, the team members, additional supports and their positions. I'm on page 70 now, the provincial government listed here. Bert worked really hard on these, getting them up to date. The federal government on page 71. And then mutual aid with Caroline County, Sunchild, Bighorn, and Ochese. Now to 6.7, industry, media on page 74. Volunteer group 6.9, if we need them. 6.10, lodging, medical. Then healthcare and medical, pharmacies, which Bert personally visited them, introduced himself, which was nice. Then 6.13 and 1.4, and then heavy equipment should we need it, 6.15. Other supplies and equipment like tents and fuel, page 81. Garbage and water trucks, 82. Then the glossary on page 84, 85. Then the appendix. So we've got quite a few documents there that we can print in a hurry, and they've all been added to with FOIP statements. So if we need to print these, we can. It's nice to have it attached to the plan for quick access. Just to find out the needs of folks to log and provide that documentation that we'll need, should we be asked. And then the setup of the reception center, which again, we're gonna do as a team because folks might have different ideas and opinions that work at the Christensen Sports and Wellness Center. So that's the next step should this be adopted. Any questions, comments? Councilor Brown?
Just thank you for all the work that's gone into this, Andrea. Can you maybe just comment for those that weren't at the meeting on the process for updating and reviewing?
Sure. Yes, yearly we'll do this, and we'll make notes as we go along. I think it's important to practice this, but according to legislation, Dean, I think it was once every 4 years, correct me if I'm wrong? To do a tabletop setup?
Tabletop is annual.
Annual.
And 4 has to be like an active live exercise.
Okay. So I think it's important that it's a living document, we can change it as we go. At least we have something now to pull upon should we, God forbid, need to activate.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've gone through this, I'm on the committee, so I don't have any further questions. I've raised them all before, so. Anybody else have any questions? No? Okay. Councilor Phillips?
If there's no further discussion, I'd like to make a motion to council adopt the Town of Rocky Mountain Council Emergency Social Services Plan as presented.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
So we'll move on to 8.3. Tax forgiveness.
Sure, what we're doing is square dance.
I know.
It has to sit. I did that wrong the first time.
I did send an email suggesting that we group our presentations if possible. Well, thank you.
It's the last time I'm doing it.
Good afternoon again.
Okay, I'll turn it over to you.
This is a request for tax forgiveness on a tax roll 815-99012. It's from the Evergreen Mobile Home Park, and you did have a presentation from the manager, Ms. Preston, earlier in the year. It's a rather complex or difficult situation. She had come before council, but she wasn't in possession of the trailer since that time, or manufactured home, sorry. Since that time, the park has been able to take over the property. The owner had passed away, and there was virtually no estate. There was no funds to deal with the taxes. It's been reassessed at zero value because it's uninhabitable. So her goal in sending the request is they are asking for forgiveness of the taxes, and then they will demolish the home and get it moved so that they can clean it up and re-rent the property. When I did look up the taxes, the amount of $3,300, of that, because it's been going on for a few years, $187 is actual taxes, and the rest is interest and penalties that have accumulated over the last 3 or 4 years. So I guess it's before council to consider whether you want to forgive this. They're advising that it would cost approximately $7,000 to remove the home. As a town, we don't really want to go, our other option would be to have to go through the process of having an auction. And if it doesn't sell, then we don't have to take possession of it, but once you own it, then you would owe the lot rent, etc. So it's not something we really are interested in doing.
Okay, Councillor Narang?
Yeah, I think that getting rid of this particular property is a service to the community as much as it is a service to that particular trailer or manufactured home park. So, I'm comfortable with the alternative.
Well, it also does make for another property,
Yeah.
like another home to be moved in there.
Yeah.
Necessary.
It's kind of a stalemate the way it is right now, so
Yeah.
it's difficult to know.
Yeah.
So if we forgive this, the removal of the property, that would be at the business owner's expense?
Yes.
This is ours? Yeah, I mean, for basically a couple $100, the rest is accumulated by somebody who can't pay it because they passed away. It makes sense to me that this can be forgiven at this point. There's nobody else to pay it.
No.
Except for possibly them, but, okay.
Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a different story if there was an estate that had some funds in it to be able to cover something like this, but in this instance where there's no dollars in the estate, it's pretty clear what our option is.
Yeah, this one saves us money. If we were to take it over and remove it ourselves,
Yes.
that would cost us more, so.
Yeah, Councillor Alderson?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion to council forgive the outstanding property taxes on tax roll 815-99012 in the amount of $3,362.64.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not much else to do there. All right. We'll move on to 8.4, medical clinic furnaces. Welcome, Mr.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Just in front of you today in regards to a request for furnaces for the medical clinic. We have had discussions with the Rocky Medical agent in regards to the need of furnaces. We're still in the process of negotiating the lease agreement moving forward, but as the weather gets colder throughout the night and in the morning, furnaces are required for the Rocky Medical building. So I'm here before you to request funding for 5 furnaces and a water heater for that building. We are in negotiation still with the tenant in regards to how this will be paid back, in regards to, how that agreement proceeds. The county has been notified in regards to this possible purchase for that building, because it is a joint ownership between us and the county. So, any questions in regards to my request?
It makes sense. We need furnaces in a building. It's our building in the long run, but we just have to figure out then how that will be funded for the replacement of those, so.
The negotiations aside, the town county or the owners of the building, this needs to have a furnace, and so the rest can be figured out
Yes.
later. This, right now, as an owner, needs to be done.
We have to protect the asset. Any other conversation? No? Any more questions? Okay. Council's direction. Councilor Alderson?
I make a motion that council approve $40,000 plus GST from the building reserves account to purchase and install new furnaces and water heater for the Rocky Medical Clinic building.
Do we need anything there to say that it will be added onto the lease or anything, or to?
Your worship, you might want to add a clause that administration negotiates the cost recovery in the new lease.
You want that part of this motion or a separate motion?
What do you want?
It's up to Councillor Alderson.
I will, I'll make it a separate motion.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
leave this motion as it
Okay,
is.
that's fine, yeah. Okay, any other questions around that motion? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried, thank you. So, Councillor Phillips?
So I'd like to also make a further motion that council instructs administration to negotiate with the current tenant in regards to a cost recovery for the furnace replacement.
That's good. Any other questions around that? All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to 9.1, Province of Alberta Assessment Model Review Toolkit. Is that Mr. Krause?
Thank you, Your Worship. So we received a letter or email from AUMA for discussion on the changes to linear assessment being proposed by the province, along with a request to submit a letter in regards to that aspect. So under the proposed changes of the province, I mean, how that affects the town is probably around $26,000 of tax revenue that we lose. And we're working that into the 2021 budget right now. And that's not insurmountable, I guess, in our opinion. I think one of our major concerns is more for our ratepayers in what the province is going to do with the school rec, because if they lower the assessment on these properties, there'd be less school requisition recovered from linear assessment. So our concern is what's happening to the school rec, because if they're just going to shift that over to like residential properties or businesses and so forth. But the province has not given any clear indication or any indication at all of the school rec. So I guess that's the information that we'd be looking for from the province before any position is taken.
Right, right. How much was our, how much did we lose out on, or I'm not sure of another term, when we lost the grants in lieu of property taxes?
Your Worship, so that dropped down to 50% of previous amounts. I believe that was close to $50,000
Per year. Yeah.
Yes.
And then for the Alberta Health Services buildings in town?
Your Worship, that goes back probably 5-6 years ago when Alberta Health, kind of did a broader interpretation of the Municipal Government Act because under the MGA, health services are tax exempt, and they broadened that definition for themselves. So that was anything leased or owned by Alberta Health Services or Alberta Health. So the PCN, for example, would become tax exempt, even though it's leased property.
Okay. So I guess we'll just try and get more information on the school rec. That will affect everybody.
Yeah, and the administration can follow up with the province and inquire on that to council, so decide.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? Councillor Narang?
Yeah, I was just, the letter template that Barrymore Sheeta provided, I thought it was really lacking. Like, there was no conversation about sharing of the linear between the rural and the urban. Nothing about that as being a potential option or a solution. I guess it's not a solution because it doesn't address the tax cuts, but I don't know. I didn't feel like it spoke for urbans very well. That's just my opinion.
Okay. So at this time, just a motion to continue to find out about how this will affect your school requisition.
Yeah, and report back to council.
Report back to council. I'll make that motion. Do you have that, Renee? Yeah. Sorry, can you read that back?
Battery low. Please charge now.
Be it resolved that council instruct administration to draft a letter to MLA, the Honorable Minister Nixon, that outlines the impacts of the proposed changes to the assessment model reviews for wells and pipelines, including school requisition impact, and bring a report back to council.
Okay. Any other questions around that? Comments on that? Okay. Councillor Fraser, have you heard that conversation? You've been hearing the conversation? Yeah, okay. And so you heard that motion? We can't hear you. Can you hear us?
I think she's muted.
Yeah, okay. Do you want the motion read back again?
I don't see anything immediately obvious.
I can read it back if you like.
Okay, Renee's going to read the motion back now. Councillor Fraser, can you please just let me know if you've heard the motion?
Be it resolved that council instruct administration to draft a letter to MLA, the Honorable Minister Nixon, that outlines the impacts of the proposed changes to the assessment model review for wells and pipelines, including the school requisition impact, and bring a report back to council.
Did you hear that motion? Okay. All right, all in favor of that motion? And that motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 9.2, Recreation Park and Community Service Board resignation. Okay.
Well, your worship, sir, so the town has received the letter of resignation from the Recreation Board from Ricky Park. So really what is on the agenda for is just council to pass a motion probably for a letter of gratitude going out to Ricky Park and go from there. So.
I also did receive a letter from a county resident that has also resigned from the rec board. So I just kind of wonder if it's time we look at this rec board. And maybe we could bring that up as service level reviews. Okay, could add that on there and find out if we need to improve on it, or just see if we're making the best use of our public members at large time by being on this board. So. Okay, so we just need a motion now to accept the resignation and send a letter of appreciation. Councillor Auld? You're good with that, Renee? Okay, Councillor Fraser, you heard that motion? Okay, all in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. 9.3, Rocky Curling Club annual payment deferral request and operating agreement extension.
Thank you, your worship. So we received this letter from the Rocky Curling Club. Really what the letter is requesting is that the town defer this year's loan payment for 1 year. In our discussions with the curling club, they are also in a bit of financial strains with COVID. Not sure how this season's going to pan out for them. And plus, we're also, as councils, we're in discussions of perhaps different operating models, but we're not there yet. So really what they're asking council is just to defer the payment for 1 year, which gives a year to review any future operation models, and plus will help them financially to make it through this season.
So I have a question regarding the sponsorship money that goes to the curling club then? That would just go straight to the town?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And that could go toward this then?
So under our agreement, the 30,000 it does form part of the loan repayment. So we wouldn't transfer the money to the curling club this year, but we would retain it, and we can apply it as per the agreement to the loan.
Okay. So how will this affect our financials as a town by doing this?
Your Worship, I mean, our loan to the curling club was funded through reserves, so it's not a debenture, so it's not as if we have a payment on this funds in the budget.
Okay. And has the county also been brought up to speed on this because would they not be part of this? Or not?
No, Your Worship, the town provided money to the curling club.
Right.
The county, in an informal agreement, would back the loan if it was in default.
Okay.
To 50%. So this does not affect them right now.
Okay.
Defer
For right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Phillips, did you have a question?
Just a question regarding the $149,000 deferral payment. How much of that would be classified interest? Or how much interest would accumulate if we defer this to the end?
So Your Worship, there isn't any interest on the loan. It's zero. But they're just asking us, part of their request is to defer it for 1 year, but did not charge interest on the deferred amount.
Because it came from reserves in the first place?
Yes.
Any other questions? Councilor Fraser, any questions? So, what's the direction? Councilor Phillips?
If there's no other discussion, I'd like to make a motion that council defer the loan payment of $139,000 from the Rocky Curling Club and postpone that for 1 year.
Do we need to have a date where we have the discussion or again?
Or does this extend the whole term?
Yeah, so that's part of the letter for extending the, that's the operating agreement.
Yeah.
But it would extend the term.
Okay.
So we would go back into the agreement and do an amendment to it.
Okay. Okay, any other questions around that? Everybody clear on the motion?
Yeah, I'm clear on the motion.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
You are? Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you.
I do have a question outside of that. You were kind of mentioning normally they might be getting some money annually that could potentially be put towards the repayment. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, it's the Christensen sponsorship money.
So can we make that happen then? Like,
It just won't go
or
to them.
automatically will do that?
It won't go to them.
Okay.
It'll come in and,
But will it be applied to that payment? Is that what you're
That's what I'd
asking?
like, yeah.
yeah.
Yes, it would.
So overdue, it won't be $139,000 then that we're actually extending that minus 60?
Minus 30.
Minus 30.
So you don't need a
Right.
motion for that, that'll just happen?
That'll just happen.
Okay.
Okay, that's good to clarify. Okay, we will move on. I just need a motion to accept 10.1 to 10.2 for correspondence for information. Councillor Alderson, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Moving on to 11.1, my report. Does anybody have any questions on that? I just need a motion to accept my report then. Councillor Narang, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Any questions on the councillors' reports? I'll make a motion to accept the councillors' reports as written. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. 12.1. Action list. Does anybody have any questions there? No? Okay, just a motion to accept the action list as presented. Councillor Fraser? Okay, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried, thank you. Administrative inquiries. Oh, are you Councillor Fraser?
Frozen.
Councillor Fraser, do you have an administrative inquiry? Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any administrative?
I do.
Councillor Phillips?
Just with the new road, 54th Street going in on Creekside, the inquiry I had is the school buses currently pick up right on Highway 752. And I was just wanting to know if we could talk to the school board and see if there's a way of getting that pickup zone moved away from Highway 752 and maybe put somewhere else in the subdivision. Excuse me, because now that we will have a loop. I think one of the biggest concerns before is the buses couldn't get turned around. So my inquiry is to see if we can move that away from the highway and get it somewhere a little bit safer.
I thought we had that discussion with Wild Rose about 5 years ago.
And they agreed to it. Once that street is built, they will have a loop because they can come back out.
Yeah.
But it's not, until the street is complete, it's technically not there yet. It's being built, but it's not in. And
Because they had a turnaround spot in there, correct?
yeah, kind of. Well, the street is going to be the turnaround spot.
Right.
The new street going in on the backside of Creekside will allow them to come out and back out again, or potentially carry on if 54th is punched through.
Mr. Shanks, did you have something to add?
Right on the bottom of 44th, the main drag going into Creekside, there is a turnaround right at the end. It was created, they were supposed to use it, never did. So the turnaround is there.
That's what I thought that we're supposed to. So can we maybe follow up with Wild Rose on that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's just a safety concern. Those kids are sitting on that highway and, God forbid someone loses control.
Well, that's been,
Exactly.
yeah, been brought up so many times. Like, I honestly thought that it was happening already.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have an administrative inquiry. I'm just kind of curious to know how you're doing with getting mobile homes on the monthly tax plan.
I don't have the exact number. I know we looked at tips just recently and we've got 30% of our property taxes are on tips. And there's 20% that are on bank mortgages, so we've got 50% overall.
Oh, okay.
But it had increased back when I brought that item, but I don't know if we've gotten any more on tips.
So should we be doing another push for that then?
We can contact them and follow up with them, and I'll check and see if Louise has done that. But
Okay.
yeah, we could. Some of them, probably will never sign up. They just don't want to, but they have done quite a bit to get them all on, so we'll follow up on it.
Okay, Councillor Fraser? This way we can't hear you, Councillor Fraser.
That would be a good time to do that,
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
because we're sending the assessments out separately from the tax bills, and they're going out sooner. That might be a good package up to say, here's your assessment, are you on tips? For everybody, not just
Sure. Yeah, good. Any other thoughts on that?
Good idea.
So do you need a motion, Dean, or are you just gonna bring that back then?
We'll bring it back.
Okay. So moving on to number 14, any notices of motion? All right. So it is 1:54 and I'll call a 6-minute break.
6.
Until 2 o'clock. Because it'll take 6 anyways.
4, not 7, but 6.
Well, because it's gonna go right until 2.
Will you just pause the live stream then?
Let's read it along.
So